the company was only formed in 2007. Could you give us some insight into your technology, which you brand high-grain solar arrays, and what makes them different from conventional concentrated solar technologies?
In fact, what we're developing is high-gain solar on silicon, which is much more analogous to tracked silicon PV systems than to anything that people conventionally think of in concentrating PV. It's really the natural evolution from high-efficiency silicon cells to tracked PV systems, and add some concentration and you further boost the gain of those very well-known silicon cells.
Okay. Now what type of, to be clear here, what type of silicon cell is actually being used?
We can use any type of cell. The economics favor the higher efficiency cells. So the winner in that category is almost always a monocrystalline cell, and those are the ones that we prefer to work with.
Okay. And how are the cells actually being cooled? Because this is obviously an important part of this.
Yes, in almost every way, the way that our cells are connected and packaged is using components and technologies from standard silicon module industry.
So this is a static type cooling system?
Yes, that's right. It's purely passive, and what we do that is unique is that we have a very efficient radiator on the back of the cell that's performing in very much the same way that a room radiator works to get heat off the metal and into the air, and that's essentially what our system does.
All right. So it's kind of like a heat sink,
exactly,
operation. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, obviously, this is a tracking-based system, which is very important for the efficiencies. But what type of tracking system is being used?
It's a very conventional electric motor-driven single-axis tracker, which is really the paradigm that's taken over the tracked silicon PV domain.
Okay, and why are long reflective racks being used?
Well, at Skyline we believe that the overall installed cost is the important end game to reduce. And from that perspective, we're looking to minimize the number of wrench turns per watt, the number of parts per watt. So we favor larger unit sizes.
Okay. Now what kind of cost per watt levels do you expect to reach?
We are obsessively focused at Skyline on minimizing the kilowatt hour cost. And there are two ways that people are working on that right now. Thin film, of course, is succeeding in getting the dollars per watt cost down, and tracked silicon is succeeding in getting the kilowatt hours per watt installed improved. High-gain solar does both. It achieves thin film costs on a dollar per watt basis, but yields or capacity factor of silicon.
Right, okay. Now, what markets are you going to be addressing with the high-grain solar technology?
We're focused on commercial, industrial, and ultimately utility scale. The dynamics of the industry are quite different in each country. So in the US it's commercial and industrial, and emerging in the US is the utility scale.
Now, a key claim of your technology is using almost off-the-shelf components. Could you explain what these are and why this is so important to?
Yes, we're really able to use the best of breed components from the cell to the glass to the reflective material, and we believe that for us that's about scalability. Skyline is all about scalability and using the capacity that exists from the larger cell companies is, we believe, a key to achieving that.
Now obviously an important aspect for you just coming out of stealth mode is when do you plan to go into volume production, and also I guess using out-of-the-box standard components. I mean, is this going to be outsourced, the manufacturing side?
Well, by using off-the-shelf components, that allows us indeed to ramp up production more quickly than we otherwise would be able to. So Q4 is the beginning of our volume production ramp, and we'll be using factories that exist today to do the module construction and the construction of the rest of our system, which is the reflective rack.
And Do you currently have an order backlog? And I mean, specifically then, who's the initial target audience?
Yes, we do have an order backlog, and the first project that we've installed was for a U.S. Public transportation agency in Silicon Valley. We'll have additional customers like that, which are end users of electricity, and we'll have some customers that are purely project developers, many of whom are here at this show here at Intersolar.
Okay. Now, given the modular type configuration of the HDS technology, what size of system can you actually physically offer?
Our system can scale down to 100 kilowatt increments all the way up to 100 megawatts. There's really not a practical upper limit other than what the market currently, where the market is.
Okay. Now, concentrated solar technologies have always claimed that, in the right locations, in the right conditions, they will offer the lowest cost per watt. But what makes you believe that your technology can succeed in achieving that when others simply haven't done that yet?
Well, again, I'll harken back to Skyline's technology really being an evolutionary step from tracked silicon, which is the dominant technology for large PV power plants, particularly here in Europe. And our system uses those same components, the same packaging technologies. And so we think it's really just a small step away from those systems.
Now, obviously, changing the subject slightly, the challenges for a startup must be immense in the financial conditions. But I mean, is this still a good time to start a company like yours?
It is. The solar industry is taking a breath as we sit here in early 2009, and we're laying the foundation for our volume ramp, which I mentioned in Q4, to take advantage of this next growth wave, which is certainly coming in the not too distant future.
Now, obviously, you're going to come up against established solar thermal players like Siemens and Schott. Do you feel that you can compete against some of these bigger players?
We do believe that those approaches are complementary in many respects, and as reflected in some of the announcements in California, where PG&E and some of the other utilities are doing large deployments of solar thermal as well as PV. PV brings the benefits of very low water usage relative to concentrating solar thermal to a much more modular project size, and it lends itself to distributed generation much better. So we see it more as complementary rather than vying for the same size market.
Do you expect the US stimulus packages to be a key growth catalyst for you?
Absolutely, yes. There's some provisions in the stimulus package which are very favorable and will serve as catalysts for larger scale deployments in the US.
Now, Skyline Solar is obviously VC backed. Did you actually find it difficult to raise funds to start the company?
Yes, that's always a difficult proposition, and even last year before the financial market collapse, the industry was being viewed as oversaturated. So it was not as easy as, say, in the frothy days of 2007, 2006.
Obviously, a key challenge for startups is moving from pilot production to volume production. The fact that you're going to roll out this technology using existing infrastructure, that still has a capital outlay for you. So how do you work that? How do you handle those kind of relationships?
That's a good question, and indeed that's one of the really unique benefits of our particular implementation of high gain solar. The two major building blocks of our system are constructed using existing factories. The first of which is the module, which will be built in a tailored production line of a standard module factory. And the second part is the reflective rack, which will be built in an automotive plant. And the capital requirements are 10 times lower than a conventional system. So there is some capital outlay, but it's dramatically reduced.